Good morning, guys. Today we're going to talk about the polar vortex that most of us have been through. Uh, for some of you that travel, you've definitely been in it. For some of you that live in the zone, you've been in the polar vortex. Uh, for others of you, you've simply sit back and watched the polar vortex on the news and seen all what all was going on. We want to talk about the challenges and the pros and cons so you can be prepared for that when the next one hits. Well, every year we'll have a couple of small areas of hard freezing and mini vortexes, if you will, but it's only every several years that we have a polar vortex that is as brutal as the one that we've just went through. So put your jackets on and let's get ready to talk about this a little bit. First place, we had record breaking cold. The coldest week that we had in the United States since 1990 something, 1890 something. So extreme cold weather. Only the second recorded measurable snowfall in Brownsville, Texas, which is on the border with New Mexico, that has ever been recorded in history. So it was really cold everywhere across. So just a lot of record breaking cold temperatures in places that don't expect cold temperatures. And that's when you get pipe breaks. That's when you run into problems and other stuff like that. So the storm track pretty much always shows up on the weather, and you can sort of see where the coldest air went on this particular map. The pink would be ice and snow. The blue would just be extreme cold, even though the ice and snow did make it into other places than just this. Now, the difference in this polar vortex than some of the others that we ran is it did come with snow in the beginning and caused a lot of havoc and a lot of problems as far as travel went. Also caused a lot of havoc and problems as far as electrical power, electricity went, as the power went out. And then what may not have affected some of the homes and some of the businesses with the cold weather because they had heat, now all of a sudden it's a big deal because you've got 10 degrees weather outside and you've got no heat for several days. No heat, 10 degrees, pipes are going to freeze. It's not much way of stopping that. So if you don't have heat, of course, one of the first things that came across when people didn't have heat is they started looking for heaters. There's not a lot of companies in southern Texas, or for that matter, any part of Texas that has heat available, because you simply just don't normally need external heat or temporary heat or different sources of heat in Texas. It's a warm state. Uh, Oklahoma's a little different, but anyway, everybody in the country was looking for supplemental heat to supplement the heat they had in the building or to try to heat the building that they had. Nursing homes were calling, hospitals were calling. Everybody wanted heat. They're going to have to evacuate the hospital if they don't get heat because people are going to get cold and freeze. And then they realized there was no way to evacuate because of the snowy roads and ice. And they also realized that there's nowhere to evacuate to. So it just became an impossible task. So you had people in nursing homes, hospitals, uh, different facilities, including regular houses and all, that just simply could not get heat. They did not have a backup system for their backup plan, and they had a storm here that with a double or triple whammy with the cold temperatures, but then that was exacerbated by the ice and snow that was on the roads. So it just made things really difficult for everybody. So when you got major hospitals and nursing homes that need heat and you can't get it to them, and then they can't evacuate the patients because of the ice and snow, then you've got a real problem. The ambulances and stuff that would normally evacuate patients obviously were busy working wrecks. You know, a normal call it'd take an ambulance an hour, it's taking 3 hours, 4 hours because of the ice and snow. So they had their own catastrophe going on in the EMS, emergency medical system, emergency medical services world, going on without having to think about, well, let's go take 1,500 patients, one patient at a time, out of a hospital or out of a nursing home. So these hospitals and nursing homes had no backup plan for heat. They started depending on us to give them that, and nobody was prepared for that because you don't need it, but every 5 or 6 years. So when there's pre-selling plans for hospitals and nursing homes, it's something that you may want to put in your plan to talk to them about and how they're going to handle that should they run out of electricity, should they run out of heat, and what they have to do in a regional or national situation. If one building runs out of heat because their heating system went down, not a big deal. You call the ambulances, they evacuate it, or somebody will have enough heat for that. But when a whole state goes down, or multiple states, as this would, it was just an extreme event to try to handle. The winter advisories came out everywhere except in the Keys. Uh, they had winter storm watches posted for upwards of 40 states and 154 million people. As I said earlier, snow falling as far south as Brownsville, Texas. And if you've ever been to Brownsville, it's right there next to the desert. And it's just something that's not normal for snow to be falling there. I was looking for that year a while ago. It was 1898 when they had their last recorded and their only other recorded snowfall that far south. So it got really cold. The ones of you that live there know it. The ones of you that had to go work in know it. The ones that don't just simply don't understand. But there's a profit center here when you're getting into the commercial line of work to be had if you can help prepare some of these places for that and help be ready to help them get some heat. We'll give you a caution about heat. Be careful when you're doing your contracts with heat. You'll have somebody call and say, the electricity went off, I need heat, I need it now. I know one company during this storm that paid $70,000 in trucking fees. $70,000 just for trucking fees to get heaters brought to a big nursing home. Before the trucks were able to arrive because of road closures, because of snow, because of ice, because of accidents on the roadway, before they could arrive, the electricity came back on at the nursing home and now they had heat. So now they don't need the heaters. Now you can understand why there's going to be a discussion about that $70,000 trucking fee. It's also a discussion about the heaters that were en route because they're going to have to pay rent on those for the 3 days that they were in transit trying to get there. So be careful when you're dealing with heat. A lot of the times when people call wanting heat before you can get there and get everything set up, their heat has come back on, whether it be from a malfunction in their heating system on a normal day or whether it be from a polar vortex or electricity being out on a stormy day. But just be a little bit cautious of heat. Most all of the companies that rent heaters will only rent heaters by the week, and once you call on the phone and order the heater, the clock starts ticking, and if you call back 3 hours later and say I don't want it, you still pay for a week because the stuff came out of the system, it came out of line, and now it's got to be paid for. So be a little cautious on heat. It's not like drying buildings. It has a little different twist to it when it comes to getting paid when those type of things happen. Some of the wind chills that we had were just ferocious. Uh, you see here that in some places, Oklahoma City minus 28 degrees. Uh, Trucks were freezing while they were running down the road. And I'll show you a picture where I can show you that in a minute. But people could not function. The people that you send into these areas to work need to have extreme emergency supplies with them. They need to have extra buddy heaters with propane cylinders in their truck in case they have an accident and their truck's disabled and they don't have a way to get heat. You can't survive long in minus 28 degree weather. If you're not preparing for yourself and your employees to do all this stuff when you go into these areas, you're failing to have a good plan together. So put together a plan when weather's going to get that cold. Your employees simply can't say, well, I'll just put my coat on, because just putting your coat on in 28 degree weather and sitting there for 9 hours is not going to work. You say, well, keep your vehicle full of diesel. That works pretty well until you stop at the truck stop and the gas station and they don't have any power because the lights have went out. And guess what happens when you have no power? The diesel pumps don't run and you can't buy diesel. And you can stay at the truck stop, but they don't have any heat either because they have no power. So you've got to look at all this stuff. You've got to go in self-sufficient, self-prepared to take care of you and your people. About 5 days before this polar vortex hit, every store in anywhere around the southern regions of the state ran out of the little green propane bottles that go on your buddy heaters. They ran out of propane bottles for gas grills. The propane companies ran out of propane because the truck couldn't transplant it or transport it over the roadways because they can't run the propane trucks on snow and ice like that. It's too dangerous. So people started running out of propane. So even if you had a heater, if it was a propane heater, you can get propane. If it was a diesel heater, you can't get diesel. So you had to be prepared for these things. It's not a normal event, but the people that are successful in commercial business are the ones that prepare for events that are not normal. So you've got to be prepared for these kind of things, and you got to have a plan and a backup plan and another plan behind that. So, put your plan together, put it on paper, put it in front of your people, and say, guys, I want y'all to punch holes in this and tell me why this won't work. Tell me what we need to change and what we need to do different. Record-breaking wind chills, again, normally when you have a polar vortex, snow and ice is not a problem. It is so cold that there is no ice, and it's so cold that the snow is a powder and it just blows everywhere. This one was different. Every hurricane is different. Every flood is different. So you've got to be prepared to do what needs to be done to go out and keep your people safe, keep your vehicles and trucks safe, and more importantly, keep them alive. And then last but not least, you'd like to make a profit on it. So energy declarations in 7 states, Alabama, Oregon, Oklahoma, Kansas, Kentucky, Mississippi, Texas. That's a large swath of the country. And if you can imagine, you're trying to work that, if you're a storm chaser and you're traveling into that to try to make money, where do you go stage at? Do you stage in Brownsville, Texas, or do you stage in Memphis, Tennessee? And we had jobs ranging all the way in between there. Oklahoma City, Kansas City, Kentucky, Mississippi, Texas, jobs everywhere. Well, if you're driving from Brownsville, Texas to Memphis, Tennessee, that's a day trip on a good day. Now you put ice and snow and no diesel and no food to eat and stuff like that in the mix, then it's a lot longer trip than that. So staging for a polar vortex is much more difficult than it is staging for a hurricane, because we know where the hurricane's going to come on shore. We know about where it's going to be, and then we're going to be within 50 to 100 miles from the eye of the hurricane to the outskirts of it. You're looking at 1,000 mile spread on this one, so yeah, you have to be ready and be prepared to do that. Uh, well, I'll just fly in there and do my jobs. And you see the last line in this? No, you won't, because all the air traffic was halted. Airports, major airports, completely shut down for 2 or 3 days. The ones that were not shut down couldn't get planes in from the other major airports to fly any flights out or in or out. So it didn't matter that the weather was good and the Keys are in New York or in some of the states that you know did not have this miserable cold. They still can get planes there to load and to travel with people, and they were having fuel problems of their own. I don't want to be political, but anybody that's against pipelines needs to study this storm very well, because those pipelines underground keep flowing your diesel fuel and your propane and your gases when stuff like this happens. But those trailer trucks and trains get stuck and they can't go anywhere. So it's just one little point there about the difference in pipelines, and what caused a lot of the outages here was not being able to transport fuel over the roadways. A lot of people died, 15 in one crash alone, or 15 people in automobile accidents. 9 died in crashes in Texas. Just some massive car accidents. And do you want to put your people out driving in this? And are they trained to drive in this? Are the vehicles equipped to drive in this type of weather, whether it's a polar vortex or not? If you're putting people out on a snowy road, are they trained to drive in it? Do they know how? Are they equipped to? And it's a difference between driving a four-wheel drive SUV down a snowy road than it is driving a 1-ton vehicle with a trailer behind it. Altogether difference in the world. These people may have been trained. They may have known what they're doing. They're professional drivers. But even at that, things go wrong. You can be running down the road as a professional driver. You can be trained and have all your equipment and your vehicles in place. But the car on the other side of the road can come over and hit you head on. And it's not a thing you can do about it on a good day, let alone on a day when snow is covering the roadways, snow and ice. And I guarantee you that fire department's normal response is probably, usually 10 to 15 minutes, probably about 45 minutes at this point. So they're going to protect lives. Property is of second nature at that point in time. So another picture of the crash and burning. Looks like maybe some transformers or generators on that truck. No doubt we're probably heading into the emergency situation to try to help some folks out. But now the folks they were going to help out is not going to get help, and the equipment's totally destroyed and some lives were lost. So you've got to be prepared for that and be careful. You don't see snow on the road on this one, because this is what's the most scary thing out there during a freeze is black ice. So you have dew or light rain or a mist falling, falls onto the roadway. You get to the bridge, the roadway's already cold, and it forms black ice, and they call it black ice because you can't see it. When the first car hits it and goes sliding and causes a jam, then everything behind it starts trying to stop, and there's no way of stopping. You actually speed up when you hit your brakes and hit the ice. The vehicle will actually speed up until it hits something that causes it to stop crashing. You see a lot of semis in this picture, and they're the biggest machines. You see the white one that's tipping over there is clearly a 1 or 2 meg generator that was traveling down the road, undoubtedly going to carry a huge generator to a facility so they could have heat. So these are the dangers that we're putting the people in that are trying to get out here and get this needed equipment to different facilities. I'm not suggesting not to do that. I'm suggesting that you know the dangers that are involved and that you do the best you can to prepare. Now, if I'm guessing pretty good, a lot of these people stayed in these vehicles for a long time, and that's where I go back again to have a backup system for heat, for some water, and stuff like that. So you're not sitting there in 20 below weather sitting in a vehicle that won't run anymore because you've been involved in a crash, and the fire department and ambulance services and all are dealing with people that are injured. They're not worried about you because your toes are cold. Um, but make sure that you have backup plans so you can have a way to survive during these events. 6 people in this one pileup did not survive. How do you get outsourced equipment and labor when the roads are like this? So you call your normal labor supplier that's going to help you on the job. Now, guys, I have to tell you, and it sort of in one way ticks you off a little bit, and in another way you have to understand. But we had customers calling during this event just getting extremely agitated because you couldn't get equipment to them. And one customer in particular finally made it through the other people in our organization, and he called me about it. And I told him we'd be there tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock in the morning if he would just do one thing. And he said, "All right, I'll do anything. What do you want me to do?" I said, "I want you to go down on I-40 there just outside of Little Rock, Arkansas, and push those cop cars over to the side of the road and tell them you're letting us come through. And when you get the cop cars moved, we'll come through." Well, of course, he couldn't do that. And so then I asked him, I said, "Well, why do you expect us to do it? How do you drive up a road that law enforcement has closed, and why would you want to? They close that road so they have time to get rid of these traffic jams that's already been created, and more traffic just makes it worse. So people will ask you to do things that are that the expectations cannot be met, and you just have to be prepared to tell those people, guys, number one, that customer's out of control if he don't already know that, and he may not be your favorite customer to deal with anyway. If he can't understand that, he's certainly not going to understand how to deal with an insurance adjuster. But you got to be prepared to have those conversations. But when the road's closed, the road's closed, and people are stuck in the middle of the road, and record services and stuff are trying to get people the road cleared up so they can get it open after they plow it. So just be careful and be ready to sit in this traffic here 6 or 8 hours in the cold and in the snow. You're going to run out of fuel, and you got to have an alternative source. Here's a picture of one of the smaller trucks we've got. It looks like rolling down a highway. The fog is the fog of dry snow. The road still has spots of ice on it and some snow on it, but that's a windshield view of what driving in these whiteout conditions can cause when the snow is blowing up through there. Another picture, it looks like the same truck rolling on into Oklahoma City. That's what they're driving through. Female driver in that, Misty, for anybody that knows her, was driving through that, pulling a 40-foot gooseneck trailer behind that truck, trying to get to a medical facility in Oklahoma City. It's a slow go, probably 20, 30 miles an hour at best. So a one-day trip is a 3-day trip. There are no hotels because the locals have taken all those up, so you sleep in the truck. You better make sure you have plenty of fuel and other things to go with you to be able to do that. But it is not easy out there on the road. Do you remember me telling you about one trucking bill being $70,000? Well, when you get people to bring equipment in to you and they have to travel through stuff like this, don't expect a $2 a mile trucking fee. And you have to prepare your client for that this trucking bill is going to be $7 a mile instead of $2 a mile because of the difficulty that you had to go through to get the equipment, the danger and the difficulty call it hazard pay, if you will. And it is very hazardous on the vehicle and the people, but you're not going to have normal rates going into that. FedEx shut down. UPS shut down for 1 week, both of them. Every single truck shut down in the region. The ones outside the region had to shut down because they couldn't handle product because the warehouses and the shipping docks got jammed up um, with product that's sitting on the docks that they have nowhere to put it. So from what did come in, and they couldn't get it out. So the ones that were where the roads were clear got jammed up because they couldn't truck it out to the places it wasn't. Uh, UPS after 1 week opened up, and it took them about a week to recover. Guaranteed overnight shipments you were getting 4 to 5 days. Uh, FedEx still has not recovered yet that I'm aware of. They're still running 2 to 3 days behind, and they haven't covered up. They hadn't recovered from the event as of yet. So a picture here of ice coming out the windows on the second floor where they've obviously had a water pipe in an attic that burst, and water's just flowing everywhere and creating ice. Now, this is in a rather large residential home, also numerous commercial buildings. Um, so when you start getting these jobs, one of the worst things that you can do, and Mr. Bill Giannone with Crest is one of the smartest people that you'll find on dollars and cents. But one of the worst things you can do as a business is take on too much work. So you can handle 20 jobs normally. So now you've taken on 40, and that's a big stretch. But if you try to take on 100 and you're simply out of control, I think Mr. Bill would attest to the fact that you're probably going to lose money on all 100 jobs because you simply are out of control. You cannot handle it. So be sure to know when to say when. Pick your jobs. If that customer's already agitated when he calls you and he wants you to be there in 3 hours and you're driving in those conditions, he goes to the bottom of the list and you just holler next. Now, you don't have to be rude and tell him that, but those are the kind of customers that are not being reasonable. And if they're not reasonable in the front, they're not going to be reasonable in the end. So pick your customers wisely, determine how many jobs you can handle until you have to say, I'm not going to answer the phone anymore. I'm not going to take any more phone calls. Lack of inventory by major manufacturers. Logistics are shut down. If they had the inventory, they can't get it to you. You're having delays with your clients. They want you there right now. And insurance companies are not deploying their adjusters to the event is largely over with anyway. Most of your major manufacturers of air movers and dehues, should you decide to go out and buy some, their inventory is already depleted from the hurricanes in Lake Charles and Florida earlier in the year, and the fact that people have left work and started on the unemployment lines during the COVID event, and they're still at the unemployment line. They hadn't returned to work yet. So these factories cannot get people to come to work on building new equipment. So that's another punch that this storm had with it. A lack of employees to be able to come in and help out with the situation, but that's been a long-term problem. And so where you normally call and a supplier may have some DEs you can get in this event, there were not a lot of equipment available because their inventories had been depleted and had not been resupplied again. So national account holders with major companies are going to get the first dibs at what you get. It's a reason that Home Depot and Walmart and those places always have stuff when mom and pop don't, because if there's a shortage of supply, the big companies take care of national account holders first. So that's going to be the same thing with these. So where you might usually run down to the local rental store and get a generator that you might need during an event like this, the national account holders are going to lock those up first. Another thing the national account holders will do is they will gamble and roll the dice. That's something you don't want to do if you never gamble with money you can't afford to lose. And again, I'm getting back in Bill's box over here. He's the money man. But you can't gamble with money you can't lose. But these national account holders will call and rent all this equipment up because they know they're going to use it. Every now and then they bite the bullet because they rent a bunch of stuff up and they don't use it. But you've got to be able to absorb that loss if you do that. But equipment flies off the shelves quickly, whether it be equipment to purchase or whether it be rental equipment or any kind of equipment. That stuff just flies off the shelf and is gone pretty quick from the national account holders. So have your people lined up. This is going to be the next wave of the event because there's so many houses it couldn't be gotten to. So the next wave is going to be with mold and mildew, and then you're going to have to deal with mold coverage policies, and you're going to have to deal with, is it covered? Be careful with that. Don't go in and do a bunch of work and not be covered, and don't go in and try to do a job that looks this bad under the pretenses of water damage if it's mold, because everybody may agree to that up front until it's time to write the check, and then they may not agree again. So get your ducks in a row, get your paperwork in order. But this will be the last wave of this storm, will be the mold remediation that goes on in the buildings that could not get help. We're flying out to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, Monday, March the 22nd, with a contractor to look at a building that had frozen pipes during the polar vortex. And yep, we're still going to wait to March the 22nd. Why? Because that's the way somebody lined it up. But that's the kind of calls that are coming in at this point in time. Buildings are still wet. People are not doing anything about them. They're going to wait, and they're going to have a big mold problem. The famous Hooters building in downtown Nashville, Tennessee, the Christmas Day bombing, it got wet, and it is still wet today. They've got to start working on that building. So just because we think we're in a hurry on all of them don't mean that everybody is in a hurry. You see a picture here on the left and talk about equipment freezing on the job site when it's 20 below with a wind chill of 40 below. Sometimes you have to heat your heater. This thermal blanket here is draped over the top of the heating chamber on a big heater. You can see to the bottom left of that a kerosene heater that somebody had, and we built a little tin over it somewhere in there to heat the heater, to get the heater where it would run. So it's a very, very difficult situation when it gets that cold. Forklifts would not start, trucks would not start. We actually left the semi trucks running all night and for all week, never shut them down and let them keep running so the motors wouldn't freeze up. You have similar situations with a lot of your other equipment. You unload portable dehues, that little bit of water that always stays in that pump out pump down there is going to be a frozen block of ice, and 30 minutes inside a cold building is not going to thaw that out. So you plug that portable DU up and turn it straight on, and next thing you know, you've got a burn up pump because the impeller could not turn because it was frozen with ice. So you have to be knowledgeable of that and prepare for it when that kind of stuff happens. So the extreme cold plays havoc on some of that equipment as well. Fuel freezes up. If it's got any water in it, it'll turn to a jello paste. Everybody who's got a diesel or gas, anything in the world, rushes to the stores and buys chemicals and fuel additives to put in it to keep it from gelling up, and they get to the store and it's like milk and bread. It's all gone. So if you don't buy that stuff and have it with your equipment way before the event, you lost out. And it's because you simply were not prepared. You're not prepared for the event. And what I want to get through to you this morning on this presentation, if I don't get through to anything, is be prepared for the event. Is fuel treatment going to go bad if it sits on the shelf and you don't use it? No, it's not going to go bad. Be prepared. Or buddy heaters, if you buy 15 of them to put one in each truck, going to go bad if you don't use them? No, they're not going to go bad. So be prepared. Do whatever you've got to do to be prepared. Sit down and write your plan your work your plan, and make sure you're ready to go do it. Now, Mr. Dick Wagner is one of the best people in the country to teach you how to get a commercial job. Bill Giannone is one of the best people in the world to try to teach you how to make money on that job. I am here to help you produce that job, because if Mr. Wagner shows you how to sell it and Mr. Giannone shows you how to make money on it, but Mr. Tarpley don't show you how to go do the job and prepare for it, you can sell all you want and do all the bookkeeping you want, but if you can't produce a job, you're not going to make any money. And I think we're all in business to make money. So you've got to have all three pieces of the puzzle put together to be able to go out and make money in this catastrophic and commercial world that we're in. So once again, plan your work, work your plan. If your plan's not written, you don't have a plan. You need to write your plan down. You need to share it with your team. I use the phrase poke holes in the plan. Tell me what's wrong with it. Now, don't just give me the problem. If you're smart enough to know there's a problem, you should be smart enough to try to create a solution. Don't ever go to anybody with a problem without a solution. Now, it's all right to say I can't figure out the solution. I'm asking for your help, and that's still part of the ongoing process of trying to find the solution. But if all you're doing is bringing problems with no solution, we call you a complainer, and we don't need complainers. They're not leaders. So if you're going to be a leader, you throw that plan out there, you ask your team to poke holes in it and to come up with solutions to any problems they have, and you'll find out that 10 or 15 or 20 heads are better than one all day, any day. So I'm Scott Tarpley with Crest. I hope this information has been helpful. There's my contact information should you have any question about anything that we've been over. So have a blessed day, and let's go out there and make some money. This storm will continue to roll on for several weeks, and there's a lot of money to be made. So thank y'all and have a good day.